A very old Stuart S50 steam plant, and this one is part 19, putting the boiler back together. The first thing I'm going to do is clean and polish up the copper shell of the boiler. I use my polishing spindle, which is very powerful and cleans the parts quickly. But for the finishing touch, I use some brasso wadding to polish up the boiler. And apart from one or two minor dints in the boiler shell, it's looking okay. For this restoration, which is a vintage Basset-Lowke boiler plant, I'm being very sympathetic to the age of the unit. So I don't want it to gleam and look like a new pin, I just want it to look nice and clean and tidy. The clip that you're seeing went on for a lot longer than this because using brasso wadding is a very labour-intensive experience. It's really good stuff to use though. Around 25 years ago, when I first bought the house that I'm just selling and moving out of, I fitted a copper light fitting. It's a real antique, it's a modified gas lamp and it's in the middle of the lounge ceiling. And 25 years on, after using brasso wadding to clean it, and that's just the one application of brasso wadding 25 years ago when I fitted it, it still looks surprisingly shiny and clean, and very shortly I'll be taking it down to move it into the next place I'm going to live in. I think I might clean it using brasso for a second time. In this clip I'm doing the test fit of the clack valve or check valve. I've fitted a washer and I need it to be in the right place once it's tightened. And I was in luck, I got it right first time, exactly the correct thickness of washer, so I applied some Loctite 542 and screwed it into the boiler backhead. This stuff is called Jet Blue Plus. I got it from a plumber's supplies shop. This Jet Blue Plus is a general purpose sealant and I've applied some of it to the gasket that fits between the pressure gauge siphon flange and the boiler backhead. This should seal it. The next part to fit to the boiler is the safety valve. This is an old safety valve I found, because the one that was with it was a modern one and looked wrong, whereas this one looks quite like a Basset-Lowke safety valve. Next I'm turning my attention to the steam tap. I've removed it from the boiler and I'm going to clean it up on the polishing spindle. And this clip in fact is me refitting it after cleaning it up on the polishing spindle. It didn't polish up too well because it's badly marked, but once again this is a vintage engine and it looks the part. It looks really bad if you put modern, perfect fittings on a very old boiler system. In this clip I'm removing the tap and the gland nut because I need to pack it with some graphited yarn. Once again, the only graphited yarn that I have which is thin is modern stuff and I don't like it at all, but that's all I've got, so I'm going to have to fit it. I'm carefully fitting it into the gland nut using a screwdriver point. And now as I fit the gland nut to the top of the valve and tighten it up, this should seal any potential steam leaks down the shaft of the valve. I've said this many times before and I'll say it again, it's not a good idea to over-tighten the gland nut. The pressure of the gland material on the shaft that's been sealed needs to be just sufficient to stop it leaking. If you over-tighten the gland material, it will score the shaft. Moving on now, it's time to apply some Loctite 542 to the pressure gauge and fit it to the siphon. I'm only doing this though because I didn't use the coned union. The coned unions are very small for these pressure gauges and break easily. As I showed in a previous episode, I silver soldered the nut onto a piece of 8 pipe. And in this clip I'm adjusting the position of the pressure gauge by rotating the small nut using my Barco spanner. Very slowly and very gently I'm rotating the siphon pipe itself until the pressure gauge is in the correct position. Now it's time to pressurise the boiler to make sure it doesn't leak. The boiler's already had a hydraulic test, so I know it's safe. I'm introducing compressed air via the valve on the top of the boiler and then I very quickly shut the valve, and the idea is the pressure stays in the boiler, and indeed it does. I would expect a slight loss via the check valve because it's very dry, there's no water in the boiler, and as you can see the boiler is quite pressure tight. Once I open the blowdown valve, of course the pressure disappears. So the boiler's okay. I'm just going to briefly move on to the baseboard and show you what I propose to do. This baseboard has many holes in it, so I'm going to fit a metal plate over the top. This is a flat plate and it's 3mm thick and it's made from steel. The first thing to do though is remove the sharp edges because it's been guillotined. I did this very carefully using my 4-inch belt sander. Even though there's still some painting to do on this boiler casing, I was very keen to fit it and make sure that it all fits together okay, and indeed it does. It's held together by 12 5BA bolts. or cheese-headed, slot-headed machine screws, whatever you wish to call them. Everything lines up and it's a really easy job to assemble and disassemble this boiler. I now need to look at the layout, and I think this is about the approximate layout. I'm putting the hand pump behind the generator, then it's not in the way of anything that's hot. Whilst you're watching these images of the boiler plant, almost complete but not quite, I'd just like to say it's very difficult for me at the moment making these videos. Apart from the work that needs to be done to the new place, I've got a lot of work to do clearing the old house, getting ready to move. At the moment I've got a skip in my garden and I'm filling it with all manner of old things, and my wife really objected when I asked her to climb into it. That's a bit unkind, and I never said that. That was a complete fabrication. I might have thought it though. So if you find there's a bit of an interruption and the video quantity decreases slightly, don't worry. Normal service will be resumed as soon as possible. I've been really busy lately, going to my daughter's wedding, getting ready with this new band for the first gig, which is on Friday. So to all my kind Patreon supporters, I thank you for your patience, and it's now time for me to get back to filling the skip in the garden. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website. Click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you will find it very easy to find other videos that you may like to watch.